Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to my fantastic review of a fantastic game, Twilight Imperium. In this video we're going to go over all the different species you can be. Now I divided up into the main game and then both of the expansions. So you'll know what races come in which expansions. Okay, here it is. Alright, so we're going to go over all the species that you can be in Twilight Imperium. Now remember in the game Twilight Imperium, how it starts off is you're going to pick one of these home planets. That's what's going to determine that species. Of course, they're not going to be face up. They're going to be face down where they all look the same. Shuffle them up, give them out to the players, and they play as that species. So going through all the species here, in no particular order, I'm going to go over each one with you very briefly. Now, if I get any of these names wrong or mispronounce them, my bad. I just haven't heard them pronounced before, or if I have, I've forgotten how other people pronounced them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that's most prominently featured on the top of the box. It's the Embers of MOT. And what they start off with is 4 ground units, 2 carriers, 1 cruiser, 2 fighters, and a space dock. Their starting technology is a viral compensator and Sarwin tools. Now, their special abilities, because each race has their own special ability, theirs is that says your trade may not require approval by trade negotiations. Remember what I said on the 5th strategy card, trade. You approve what trade goes through. Well, with the Haitian, you don't have to approve any trade. They can approve their own trades with people. They have that power because they are masters of the trade. Also, it says you do not need to spend a command counter to execute the secondary ability of the trade strategy, which is nice. And when you receive trade goods from one of your trade agreements, you'll receive an additional trade goods. So you would get +1 on any other open trade agreements you have with other players. Next, it says no player may ever, except for war, break a trade contract with you, which is true. You can break off trade contracts if it says so on the cards, or if you go to war with someone, you automatically break the trade agreement. However, with the Haitian, you cannot break a trade agreement with them unless you go to war with them. That's the only way to break a trade agreement, or unless they call it off. It also says during the status phase, you may trade action cards with other players. So that is really awesome too. You have the ability to trade action cards with people. All right, so that's the Haitian here. Let's go to the universities of Joel Nar. What these people start with is 2 ground forces, 2 carriers, 1 fighter, 2 PDS units, a dreadnought, and a space dock. And their starting technology is the Hylar 5 assault laser, anti-mass deflectors, enviro compensator, and Sarwin tools. Now, their special abilities is you get a -1 on all combat rolls. Oh, that kind of sucks. But then look what else they get. It says when executing the secondary ability of the technology strategy, you may execute both the primary and the secondary ability. Which basically means, as everyone's getting 1 technology per round, you are actually accumulating 2, because they are very fast learners, so they accumulate technology faster. So even though you're -1 in combat, you're going to make up with it with all the technology advancements your race is going to have. You're going to be learning at twice the speed of anyone else. Also it says, you may spend a command counter from your strategy allocation to immediately re-roll any of your die rolls, which would be very important if it came to battle or something like that. So that's the universities of Joel Nar. The next one is the Mentat Coalition. And what they start off with is 1 carrier, 3 cruisers, 1 space dock, 1 PDS unit, and 4 ground forces. They also start with technology of the Hylar 5 assault laser and enviro compensators. Their special abilities include at the start of the game with 1 additional command counter in your fleet supply area. So you actually get to start with an additional fleet person in there, which is really awesome. It says before the space battle begins, in which you are participating in, of course, it says you may fire with up to 2 cruisers or destroyers, or any mix thereof. Enemy casualties are taken immediately without any return fire. So remember what I told you, usually destroyers get to do that. So if you had and here's an example of a destroyer here, it would fire first before the battle. However, if you have destroyers or cruisers as the Mentat Coalition, those also count basically as the same as a destroyer would. So that's kind of cool. Also it says during the strategy phase, you may take 1 trade good token from up to 2 different players from such a target player that must have at least 3 or more trade goods on their race sheet. So if they have more than 3 here, you can pirate them, because these are the pirates of the galaxy here, and you can pirate 2 other players and steal some of their trade goods. This is going to make someone hate you. Pretty awesome species there. The ZCHA Kingdom. What they start with is 1 space dock, 3 fighters, 1 PDS unit, a carrier, 2 ground forces, and 2 cruisers. They also start with, their starting technology is anti-mass deflectors and enviro compensator. Now their special abilities are, when executing the second ability of the diplomacy strategy, you may execute the primary ability instead. So they are kings of the political world. Also it says immediately after a political card has been drawn and read aloud, you may spend 1 command counter from your strategy allocation to cancel that card and force another political card to be drawn. You can actually move to adjourn basically from that session. Nope, we're not voting on that, and spend a strategy allocation and X-nay on that law that you're about to vote on or whatever. That is really powerful. Like I said, in the political world, they are kings here. Also it says, your opponents must receive -1 on all combat rolls against you during the first combat round of all space battles and invasion combat. This is going to make it extremely hard for them to beat you on that. That first round is going to be a doozy because they're going to be -1 against you. So you definitely get the start off advantage on that first round of combat because people are a little slow when fighting the ZCHA kingdom. Alright, so now we have the Barony of Letten. They start off with 1 space dock, a dreadnought, a destroyer, a carrier, and 3 ground forces. They have a Hylar 5 assault laser and anti-mass deflectors as their starting technology. Now their special abilities, and it says that before any space battle or invasion combat round, you may spend 2 trade goods to give to all of your spaceships, a 1+ in battle, or all your ground forces a +2 in battle on their combat rolls for that combat round. So you can actually, trade comes in very handy with these people because it can encourage or actually build up your armies, whether they're in space or on the ground. Now, it says also your fleets may always contain 1 more ship than your number of command counters in your fleet supply. So that's really cool. So if you had 4 here, you could actually throw 1 more ship on there than what was in the fleet supply and have 5 ships available. So that's really cool as well. There's a lot of cool things about each one of these races. All right, the Lizx Mindnet. They have 1 space dock, 1 carrier, 5 ground forces, 1 dreadnought, 3 fighters, and 1 PDS unit. Their starting technologies are the Enviro Compensator, Stasis Capitals, Cybergenetics, and Hylar 5 Assault Laser. They come packed. It says the base cost of your dreadnought units are a 4. Usually for everyone else, to buy a dreadnought, it would be 5, but not if you're the Mindnet. They get it for a discount. They get it for 4. It says your dreadnought units receive +1 during space battles, and your ground forces units receive +1 when attacking during invasion combat. Wow! So this is definitely a warrior race here. It says you start with 1 extra command counter in your strategy allocation box. So that's another bonus for being with the Mindnet. Also, you have the Stardock Nar. They actually start off with 5 ground forces, 1 carrier, 1 cruiser, 1 PDS, and a space dock. Their starting technology is the Hylar 5 assault laser and deep space cannon, and they receive +1 on all combat rolls. So they are a huge warrior race just in general to be dealt with. Actually, this is the first race I actually had to be when I first played Twilight Imperium. And by the way, all the races have a backstory here, so if you get bored during the play, you know, someone else's turn, it won't be your turn for another 5 days. You can read about the history of any of these races. So that's really neat. All right, so the next group is the Asaro Tribes. And what they start with is 1 space dock, 5 ground forces, 1 PDS, 2 carriers, 1 cruiser, and 2 fighters. Their starting technology is anti-mass deflectors and the XRD transporter. Now, their special abilities say that you're allowed to skip your action turn during the action phase. You may not skip 2 such action turns in a row. So remember when I told you earlier that if you pass, you're out of the game? Well, with the tribes, you can actually pass and still be in the game. Now, you can't pass, you can't do it twice in a row, but you can pass every once in a while and so stay in the game without having to use as many movements. That is very interesting. It says you may also draw 1 additional action card during every status phase. You can actually get more action cards this way. You also are never limited to the hand size of action cards regardless of the game rules or any active political cards. So even though I told you can have X amount of action cards in your hand, it does not apply to these tribes. Finally, it says once during every strategy phase, you may look at another player's hand of action cards. These are like the spies of the galaxy, and they can look and see what you have. So that is very interesting, because what if I was to look at your hand and then tell everyone else? Maybe you could bribe me to be quiet, or maybe you could bribe me to go look at someone else's hand. I don't know. This would be a very interesting try to play with. I haven't seen anyone play with it yet in my games, but looks interesting. All right, next up, the Nautilus Collective. They start off with a space dock, of course, 4 ground forces, 1 PDS, 1 carrier, 1 cruiser, 1 destroyer, and 4 fighters. Their starting technology is anti-mass deflectors and an enviro compensator. Their special abilities say that the initiative number on your chosen strategy card is always 0, replacing the normal initiative number for strategy cards. This means that you are always the first in the order of play. You always play first, regardless of which strategy card you picked. You will always go first. That can be very helpful. Another thing says, if attacked, a Nautilus fleet may retreat before the beginning of the space battle step of the tactical action sequence, following the normal retreat rules and restrictions. So remember, I told you had to stay through 1 round and then you could choose a retreat? Not if you're the Nautilus. If you think, man, I'm going to lose this, I need to get out of here now before I take any damages, you can retreat automatically with no penalties. Finally, it says all Nautilus fighters receive a +1 on combat rolls during space battles. Wow! So it makes their fighters just a little bit more powerful. So a lot of interesting things with the Nautilus Collective. The next race is the Federation of Seoul. They have 5 ground forces, 2 carriers, 1 destroyer, and 1 space dock. Their starting technologies are anti-mass deflectors and cybergenetics. Their special abilities say that as an action, you may spend 1 command counter from your strategy allocation box to place 2 free ground forces on any planet you control. So they're king of the ground forces here. They can play them anywhere without having to, shuffle people to that planet. Also, it says during the status phase, you'll receive 1 extra command counter. I told you everyone gets 2 at the beginning, but you would get 3 automatically. So Federation of Seoul, an interesting group, and these are basically the humans of Twilight Imperium. Now we're getting into species from the first expansion. The first one is the Embers of MOT. They start with 4 ground forces, 2 fighters, a war sun, and a space dock. That's right, they start off with the war sun. So their starting technologies, of course, are the war sun, enviro compensators, and saw wind tools. They're the only race that starts with a war sun, so you can imagine how powerful they can be. Their special abilities say that your war suns have a base movement of 1. So usually war suns can move 2, but yours can only move 1. Now this improves a 2 when you acquire the deep space cannon technology. So when you acquire things that are needed for the for the war sun, then you can have a normal operating war sun. What you have is maybe like a prototype war sun. It doesn't move as fast as the others. It also says, as an action, you may spend 1 command counter from your strategy allocation area and place 2 free fighters or 1 free destroyer in any one system containing one of your war suns or space docks. So it's kind of like the Federation of Seoul, except they're for fighters instead of ground forces. Finally, it says, your ships may move through, but not end their movement in supernova systems. So on supernovas, I told you could not move in through these. You had to go around them. Not if you're the Embers of MOT. You have the technology to go straight through a supernova, which is very powerful. You can't stop in the middle of one, but you can. Now, also, you get this tile if you're with the Embers of MOT, because and it's located here on the back, has their emblem to show you this is that. This is not one of the regular board game pieces. This is something you'll hold on to because you have a technology, a special technology for your race that can create a supernova and be a pain in the butt to everyone else on the board when you replace your planet or whatever it is with that supernova. Next up is the Winu. They start off with 3 ground forces, 1 carrier, 1 cruiser, 2 fighters, 1 PDS, and a space dock. Their starting technologies are anti-mass deflectors, enviro compensators, and stasis capsules. Now, their special ability says that you may always add the influence value of your home system planet to your votes, even if it's exhausted. So remember, I told you, usually if you add the influence, use the influence on a planet, you exhaust it. Not if it's their home planet. You can still use the influence and not exhaust the planet, which means you can also use it for resources later on. Basically, you can use both sides of their home planet card, which is very, very, very cool. Another one says your planets can contain at least one ground force that are immune to the local unrest action cards. And those are some action cards. You can look them up when you get your own deck that deal with ground forces. But you would be immune to those action cards. Other one says you do not need to spend a command counter to execute the secondary ability of the technology strategy. So basically, they're also tech savvy too a little bit. They don't have to pay the fee for the technology. Well, the command counter at least. They would have to pay the resources, but not the command counter. And they could get technology. So they can get technology a little bit easier than other people. It doesn't cost as much. All right, so the next one is the Clan of Sar. And what they start off with is 4 ground units, 2 carriers, 2 fighters, 1 cruiser, and 1 space dock. Their starting technology is the anti-mass deflectors and the RXD transporter. Now, their special abilities say you gain 1 trade good every time you acquire a new planet. So again, they're kind of like the Haitian. They can get good on trade. Also says your space docks have a movement of 1, but may not build during the same activation in which they move. Your space docks are never placed on planets that have a production capacity of 4. So basically, they're the only ones here that can move a space dock. Now, of course, you can't produce units on there and move it, or move it then produce units. You had to do one or the other. But that's very unique. No one else's space docks move but the Clan of Sar. They're kind of like the gypsies of the galaxy in a way. Also, it says your space docks are destroyed if ever present with an opponent's ship without any of your ships present. So usually what I told you, if there was like an enemy ship, you know, that was in the area, you couldn't produce. But if there's an enemy ship and there's no other ships around the Clan of Sar space dock, it automatically explodes. That's kind of a little bit of drawback from having yours move. Also, it says you may fulfill objectives even though you don't control your home system. Sometimes it says, oh, you have to have control of your home system. Not if you're the Clan of Sar, because they're a gypsy group, they're vagabonds, they roam the galaxy. So their home system isn't really their home system. Everywhere they go is home. So that gives you another extra advantage in the game. Next up is the Yin Brotherhood. Now, they have 4 ground forces, 2 carriers, 1 destroyer, 4 fighters, and 1 space dock. Their starting technology is a Hylar 5 assault laser, automated defense turrets. They have special abilities of, it says, before invasion combat in which you are the attacker begins, you may roll 1 die. On a 5 or more, your opponent loses 1 ground force and you gain 1 ground force. So that is pretty awesome on invasion combats. But then secondly, it says, immediately before the second round of the space battle, you may discard one of your participating destroyers or cruisers to choose 1 opposing ship present and immediately inflict damage, 1 hit on it. So for instance, let's say I have a destroyer and I just want to sacrifice him. I can choose which of my opponent's ships that I want to hit with this. It's basically a kamikaze maneuver, but guarantees you 1 hit on the ship of your choice. So maybe they have their War Sun and it's damage 1, and you know they're not going to wait a while before it gets damaged again. You can go ahead and just do a suicide run on it. Really neat. Also, it says, once per turn, as an action, you may place your control marker on an unexhausted planet card you control. Until the end of the round, its influence and resource values are reversed. Let's say the planet Darien was just a regular planet. You could have, say, okay, instead of 2 resources, it now has 4 resources. Instead of 4 influence, it now has 2 influence. Now that could be helpful if you need resources, but you don't have enough resources on your planets. But maybe this planet has a lot of influence and you want to flip it over. You can do that as an action, one of your exhausted planets. So just another interesting take on what strategies are available in the game with the Yin Brotherhood. Now we're getting to the species from the second expansion. And the first one is the Arborik. And they start off with 4 ground forces, 1 cruiser, 1 carrier, 2 fighters, 1 PDS, and 1 space dock. Their starting technologies are the anti-mass deflectors and the stasis capsules. Now, their special abilities say you may not build ground forces with your space docks. Oh, that's sad. But why is that? Well, you read the second part. It says your ground forces have a build capacity of 1. You may not build units with ground forces that have been moved during the same activation. And at the start of the action phase, place 1 ground force on a planet you control. So basically, this is kind of like plant people. When they get on a planet, every phase round, it's going to be harder and harder and harder as they start multiplying and putting more ground units on the planet. Their planets are going to be very, very tough to take control over if they've been there for quite some time. Very interesting species that they chose for this second expansion. All these are interesting. The next one is the Necrovirus. And the Necrovirus starts with 2 ground forces, 1 carrier, 2 cruisers, 1 space dock, and they're the only race that starts off with 1 mechanized unit, like the tank for ground forces. Their starting technology is Gen Synthesis, Hylar 5 Assault Laser, and the Daxiv Animators. Now, their special abilities say you may not vote on political or agenda cards. Aw, that sucks. So you're out of the political fight. But it says when you destroy at least 1 enemy unit in a space battle or invasion combat, excluding PDS fire, you may copy, basically receive, 1 free technology card, ignoring all prerequisites that the enemy player has already researched, limit once per battle. So basically, the only way that you can get technology, because if you notice, the other one says you may not receive technology cards from political, assembly action, or strategy cards. Anytime you would receive a technology card in this way, you instead gain 3 command counters. So you get extra actions when everyone else gets extra technology. So the rules change for you. Why can't you do that? Because the only way you get technology is to fight other people. And then you can copy any one of their cards. Like I spent maybe forever learning how to build a war sun. Well, you attack me once, destroy one of my fighters, you basically analyze it and you have copied war sun technology. Now you can build war suns without even having to go through all the tech tree that I did. Basically, they're the Borg. It's very smart. I can't believe they came up with them. And the final group is called the Ghost of Creus. Now their starting technology is anti-mass deflectors and XRD transporters. Wait, where are the ships, you say? Because they do have starting ships, but this isn't the planet. This is the one that you put on the big board. This is the gate. Where's the planet? Well, you have to go through the D-warp, and then they have this separate hectagon that you put outside of the galaxy, because they're in another galaxy, I guess. And so they have this D to D here that you have to go through on the board to get to their home planet. They are masters of the warp. They start with 4 ground forces, 2 destroyers, 1 carrier, 2 fighters, and of course, a space dock. Their special abilities say that they can treat A or B wormhole systems as if they were adjacent to each other. Meaning, if it's an A warp and they wanted to go to B, then they could do that. No one else can do that but these people. Also says you may also use wormholes regardless of other effects or game effects or restrictions. There may be restrictions that you may vote on, say, hey, all wormholes are shut down for this round or shut down permanently. Not for them. They can still use the wormholes. Finally, it says other players may not use A or B wormholes to travel into a system that you control. So if I control a system with an A or B wormhole in it, then you cannot jump through that. You can't use that wormhole. By the way, these are extra tokens that you can play as them. There's special technology that allows you to make up your own wormholes as you go across the game. Check this out. There's even a C wormhole. You're kind of wondering that, right? Since I said this is D, you're like, where's C? C's right here. You can make it up. They have special technology that lets them do that. So again, another interesting species in the second expansion. All the different alien species in Twilight Imperium are one of the huge reasons why this game, to me, is such a success. Because if you get a warrior race, you're going to play like that species and go to war a lot. Get a tech-savvy race, you're going to focus more on technology. Get a race that's good in the political realm, you're going to shine in the political realm. Maybe you're excellent at trade. That's where you're going to try to dominate the galaxy. It forces you to think and play like that species. That's why every time you play Twilight Imperium, you will be playing it with a new set of eyes. Honestly, even if you get the same species, it's how you react to the other species around you. So the game is always different. You're always having to re-strategize. Okay, what are my strengths here? Okay, what are my weaknesses here? They weren't the same from the last time I played, because the last time I played I was such and such race. Well, now I'm such and such race and I don't have those weaknesses. These are my new weaknesses. Brilliantly thought out, excellently orchestrated. This game is the real deal. It's the complete package, and the race cards, the species, the different types of species, really bring that point home. So, what are my final thoughts? Well, you'll have to wait for the next video.